Leadership. My name is Beth Bergen. I'm an internationally awarded leadership and communication coach, and I am here most every Tuesday. And I can have you either join me live or perhaps you're someone who prefers to go back and have a look at the replay. Whoever you are, welcome. It's great to have you here. Last week, we looked at, the proximity and the people that you spend time around. But we looked at it from a bit of a different perspective. We looked at who do you need to weed out? Who do you need to actually identify is perhaps bringing a toxicity or a difficulty or negativity into your life rather than those people that you may really want to be spending time around. And we looked at, hey, what you've got to do here is actually step away from people. The key that sits underneath all of this is communication. And what has helped me to recognize it, following on from last week, is really that we need to understand as individuals that there is a different way to communicate when we're communicating up in a work situation, when we're communicating up to our superiors, when we're communicating out to our peers, and when we are leading and or managing our teams. And that communication might also be quite different when we're actually out there in other areas of our lives. However, same, but different. So it's those core elements of our communication that I want us to start looking at building up today, because after all, our goal is to actually become a super communicator. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I don't know how many of you may have read Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit. He's written another one recently called Super Communication. And what I love is that he kind of breaks communication down into three really easy to look at main types of conversation. Now, what we know is that this is likely to be a generalization, but go with Charles and I on this because I think that it makes a lot of sense. Those three main types of conversation are this. The first one is practical. We'll talk about what that is in a moment. The second is an emotional type of conversation. And the third one is social. Now, what we know is that understanding these different types of conversations will really help you to connect with people. Something that I always say is that it's really important for you whenever you're deliberately going to have a conversation with someone to know what the outcome of that conversation is. What do you want the outcome to be? So when you put that together with Charles' information about the type of conversation and lifting your awareness about what that type of conversation is, hopefully we're going to build that rapport and get that communication happening in a really positive and congruent way much quicker. Now, you may have heard me say this before. A lot of us think that simply because we can talk, we can communicate. So we're learning to talk, we're not actually learning to communicate. And so it's important to remember that communication is not always easy and it's not always instinctive. It's something that you may have to be deliberate about. Not going to get it right the first time necessarily. So if you don't, what I'd really encourage you to do is to give it another try and think about, that self-reflection that we've talked about with your self-leadership. Think about adapting your approach. Think about taking a different approach. So the practical conversations that I was talking about a moment ago, they're all based around what is this about. You're sharing information, you're sharing facts. You might be inclined to be solving an issue. It's a practical conversation. The second one is emotional, and it's much more about feelings. Much, much more about feelings. So that's based on what am I feeling. And the third one is a social conversation, which is going to be based around, what is going on for me, what is going on for other people. It might be some planning into the future. The skill for you to become a super communicator is to listen for the language, watch the tone of voice, watch the body language, watch all of those non-verbals, and be prepared to switch if you need to. Now, let's have a look at an example here. An example might be that one of your peers comes to talk to you and says, "Oh, I just had to have a really tough conversation with Geraldine." A really tough conversation. First thing they may need you to do is to empathize with them, because this is the emotional part of the conversation. That's what they may need initially, just for you to actually acknowledge that you've heard them. "Oh, that must have been tough. She's got a bit of a reputation," right? Then if you're listening for them, when they're ready, not just because you're getting impatient and thinking, don't be drowning in your own sorrows here. Come on, let's move forward. When they're ready, what you're going to do is shift to troubleshooting. Or what they might do, rather, is shift to troubleshooting. And this is where it's practical. Okay, this was how Geraldine responded. What do you think I'm going to need to do now? What are you thinking about such and such? Who should I go and tell about this? And then when they're ready again, they may move to talking about the impact that it'll have on others. "Oh, I'm a bit concerned she'll go back to the others and she'll say these things, and that could really upset the apple cart. I've worked so hard to be able to develop this. What do you think?" Okay, that would be the social part. Now, you've heard me keep on saying, when they're ready, when they're ready. This isn't about you impatiently moving it along. We want you to notice what they want. That's the skill in communication. Notice where they're going. Agree sometimes. It's not about butting heads. Agree, because the more you agree, the more you're likely to encourage them to talk to you. Give them some validation. Might be about giving some advice, but it's the key here is listening and then responding to what you're hearing. Because obviously our goal is to be having the same type of conversation at the same time. I was working with a client recently who was having seriously frustrating issues with a new member of a team that she'd become a part of. And she would go and she would tell her husband, "Oh, about this person, about this," she just needed to vent. And when she'd done that little vent, she was fine. She could get on with what she needed to do. And his response very often was not to absorb that emotional part, but to actually move to practical. And this is a very male-female thing, which is why I've used a male-female example. Come up with a solution. I'll give you that solution and then you'll be fine. Yeah. And so what I worked on with my client was, how can you help him to understand what you need? So what she did was she gave him a strategy. I'll come out and I'll say, "Wow," about this guy. And I just need you to quietly say to me, "Oh, he's a bit of an idiot, isn't he?" And that will help me. That will validate my feelings. And I'll either go again, So you'll say it again, or I'll calmly sit down and go back to work. Yeah? That's what I'll do. So you'll want to know, you want to make sure that you're on that same wavelength. That became a positive conversation and they actually laughed a whole lot more. So one of the things that's important for you to do when the person is in the emotional stage is to ask them to tell you more. Oh, that doesn't sound good. Oh, tell me some more about that. Oh, how's that a problem for you? Those kinds of questions, so that you've got a lot more of the emotion out before you move on to solutions. In practical conversations, ask practical questions. What can I do to improve what I'm doing? Is there some feedback you can give me? How can we work this out so it doesn't happen again? Those kinds of questions. When you're meeting new people, it's all about asking deeper questions. So this isn't just, oh, how are you going? Or, what do you do? This is about saying, oh, what's your favorite job of, what's the favorite part of your job? Hey, I really enjoyed that breakfast and the conversation that we just had at the networking function. What was the favorite thing, or what was your key takeaway from that guest speaker? What was your most memorable live concert that you've ever been to? Ask deeper questions. You'll build that rapport so much quicker. So much quicker. So that gives you that quick overview of those 3 types of conversations. What I'd like you to start doing is noticing what you're noticing when you're talking to other people, to see if you can identify where they might be. If you can identify it, it's kind of much easier to then lean back and allow them to move the conversation to where it needs to go to. Hey, the next bit that I'd like to look at is this. It's always difficult in communication to give appropriate, well, I'm not even sure if feedback's the right word, but to point things out, to look to be able to influence change. And reframing is a skill that I'd like you to start to think about using. So, okay, first thing, it is so easy to point out the negatives. So easy. We look at what's wrong. We talk about what we hated. We talk about what we disliked. That was terrible. All of those kinds of words in our language. Now, if this is directed towards a person, because it's their behavior that we're noticing or that we're commenting on, we'll often get a really defensive response. And that can go one of 2 ways. They can either bite back, which is the more loud response, or they can become really silent. And often they're silent because they're hurt and or angry inside. So that kind of resentment will be building up at you. And it's, someone who's bubbling away with resentment can quickly become passive aggressive, can quickly, things blow, and it might not be pretty. So either way, this can lead to a fight. So I want you to remind you about something. When we're giving feedback, whether it's a saying, I'm not sure about that dress, right through to, oh, could we have gone a different way? This is the wrong way to go, isn't it? Right through to whatever it is that you're commenting on and giving feedback on for a team member. What we're looking to do, the outcome of the conversation, is that we're asking for a change of some kind. Yeah? We're asking for a change of some kind. For example, if the music that's playing, if you don't like the music that's playing, it's really an uphill battle to get someone to admit that they've got terrible taste in music. You know, that like they're going to get defensive if you start hammering away about that. And that's way up here is a 10, when what you actually want to do is something down here, which is something quite simple. I just want them to change it. I just prefer that they change it. I don't need to comment about the style of their music or their taste in music. However, we often go in with, oh, this is terrible. What did you put this on for? As opposed to saying, can we put something else on for a while, please? Simple, positive. And what you've done by reframing is you've expressed your preference without triggering that defensiveness in people, without triggering that potential negativity in them. You're saying what you're liking, not complaining about what you didn't like. Another example might be this. Instead of saying, you did this report really poorly, coming back and saying, let's revisit these aspects of your report and look at how we could improve them. Completely different. One is much more collaborative, it's much more positive, it's much more, we're in this together, let's move forward. It's not so personal. It's not attacking them. When you're thinking about this reframing, what I'd like you to do is to move to that space, and I've talked about this a lot before, where what you're doing is anticipating what the outcome is. You know, the outcome of this interaction is the following things. In this case, with reframing, anticipate what it is that you're going to say and then reframe it so that it comes into the positive. Okay, reframe it so that it's in the positive. I've given you some great examples. If you need to, go back and listen to the replay and you'll get those other examples. So to finish off, let's do a quick summary of what we've covered today. We covered that the three different types, with me going 4-4, three different types of conversation: the practical, the emotional, and the social. What I've said to you is to listen. Listen so that you can respond to where the speaker is at and be aware of the outcome you want from the conversation, as well as the outcome that they seem to be looking for. So as you get more skilled at this, you can shift people from wherever they are to closer to where you might want them to be over time. Again, we also looked at reframing, where what we're able to do is to present a negative thing in a positive manner. We're going to turn our thinking around. Okay, that's it for today, Tuesday, the 5th of March. Thank you to those people who've been here. If what you're wanting, if what you're looking at is the replay, love it. Just please put hashtag replay down below. If you've got questions, if you've got comments, if there are topics, remembering that leadershipization is about all things leadership, and that communication falls quite naturally under leadership because it's one of the necessary skills of leadership. If there is anything that you would like to ask, please reach out to me. Pop me a question. There's a topic you want me to look at. I'm really happy to address that. Now, always a reminder, I want to put this up for you. Deliberate Reset. It's a 10-week, very small, hand-picked group. We work together on leadership skills, communication skills, and our mental fitness with the support of the Positive Intelligence app. It is game-changing. Absolutely awesome. So we spend about 90 minutes together each week, running through the learnings from the app and the activities from the app, and then honing down to tailored leadership and communication skills specifically for you, because they're going to be relevant to your situation. That's how they can be most useful to you. So thank you. Any questions, any comments, pop them in the chat. I look forward to seeing you back here again next